Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna Hayes, 32 years old, and I've spent most of my career quietly leading a major division at a tech company, keeping my successes under wraps, especially around my older brother, James. That all changed one Easter Sunday at our parents' cozy suburban home in Portland. The tension had been building for years, and I knew something had to give. James had always dismissed my career, painting himself as the family's tech genius while downplaying my achievements. Little did he know, my company had just acquired his struggling startup. As we gathered around the dinner table that day, my stomach churned with anticipation. Before I share what happened when my success finally spoke louder than my brother's ego, I'd love for you to drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever dealt with a know-it-all family member, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll relate to this story. Growing up in Portland with James was like living in a constant shadow. From the moment he built his first computer at 12, while I was still weaving friendship bracelets in our shared bedroom, a pattern was set. James was the tech prodigy, destined for greatness, and I was just the little sister, always scrambling to keep up. "That's nice, Brie," he'd say, his tone dripping with condescension whenever I showed him something I was proud of, a school project, a drawing, anything. It was clear he thought my accomplishments were trivial compared to his. I remember winning the 6th grade science fair with a project on solar energy that I'd poured my heart into. I was so proud, clutching my ribbon, but James was quick to point out that it was pretty basic compared to the programming competition he'd won that same year. It stung, but I swallowed the hurt and kept going. Our parents, Richard and Kathleen, didn't mean to play favorites, but they were captivated by James's technical wizardry. Dad, an accountant who still fumbled with programming the DVR, looked at James like he was decoding the secrets of the universe when he talked about coding. Mom, a high school English teacher, would smile and nod, clearly impressed even when she didn't fully understand his jargon. "Your brother has a special gift," they'd tell me, their voices filled with awe. "Not everyone thinks that way, Brianna." Those words, meant to encourage, often left me feeling like my own talents were somehow less valuable. Through high school, I excelled in business classes and took on leadership roles, student council president, debate team captain, but those achievements always seemed secondary to James's robotics trophies and coding accolades. When college applications came around, James was accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship for computer science, a golden ticket that had our parents beaming with pride. I chose a business program at the University of Washington, a top-tier school with an excellent reputation, but James couldn't resist a jab. "Business, huh? I guess not everyone can handle the rigor of a real STEM program," he smirked. Our parents scolded him. "James, be nice to your sister," but their reprimands lacked conviction. Dad would quickly pivot, asking James about his latest coding project, reinforcing the unspoken hierarchy James had established. It was as if my path, though different, was always less significant in their eyes. The one person who truly saw me was my grandmother, Eleanor. At 78, Grandma was a surprise in our family, a tech-savvy former mathematics professor from the 1970s, a time when women in her field were rare. She wielded an iPad and smartphone with ease, outpacing even my parents in her embrace of technology. During my sophomore year of college, home for Christmas break and feeling particularly overshadowed after James dominated dinner with tales of his Google internship, Grandma pulled me aside. "They don't see it yet, Brianna," she said, her voice warm but firm. "But you have something just as valuable as technical knowledge. You understand people, systems, and the big picture. That matters in technology, too, maybe even more." Her words were a lifeline, giving me the courage to lean into my strengths. With Grandma's encouragement, I threw myself into my studies, graduating with honors and landing a marketing job at a small tech firm called DigiPath. Predictably, James was unimpressed. At my graduation dinner, he scoffed, "Marketing for a tech company? So, you'll be making pretty brochures for products you don't understand." His words cut deep, but I swallowed my anger and made a silent vow to prove him wrong. At DigiPath, I worked harder than anyone, not just mastering the marketing side, but diving deep into our products. I took night classes in basic programming, not to become a developer, but to speak the language of our technical teams fluently. Within 3 years, I was promoted to marketing director. 2 years later, I was recruited by Synergy Tech, a major player in enterprise software, to lead their marketing strategy. Each milestone in my career was met with the same dismissive attitude from James. When I shared my excitement about joining Synergy Tech, he interrupted with news of his own startup idea, stealing the spotlight. My promotion to team lead coincided with his first round of seed funding, and when I became department head, he announced a feature in a tech blog. Family gatherings grew increasingly tense. James dominated conversations with buzzwords like neural networks and blockchain architecture, tossing them out without explanation, effectively shutting everyone else out. "Don't worry if you don't get it," he'd say, "especially to me. It's pretty complex stuff." My parents would nod, impressed, while I sat quietly, my achievements overshadowed by his bravado. Grandma Eleanor, though, would catch my eye across the table, her knowing wink a silent reminder, "Patience, Brianna. Your time will come." That time arrived in a way I never could have predicted. 7 years into my career at Synergy Tech, I was appointed Director of Strategic Acquisitions, a role that combined my business acumen with my hard-earned technical knowledge. My team was tasked with identifying promising smaller companies for acquisition, analyzing their potential to enhance Synergy Tech's offerings or neutralize future competition. During a routine review of acquisition targets, a familiar name landed on my desk. Next here, a startup with innovative technology, but dire financials. It was James's company. My career at Synergy Tech hadn't been a fluke. While James was busy boasting about his achievements, I was quietly building mine. Starting in marketing, I quickly proved my ability to analyze market trends and bridge the gap between technical teams and business objectives. My knack for strategic thinking propelled me up the corporate ladder faster than I'd anticipated. As Director of Strategic Acquisitions, I led a team of 15, reporting directly to the C-suite, evaluating dozens of companies each quarter for their current value and future potential. When Nextier appeared on our radar, I was stunned. Their machine learning technology could enhance our flagship product, but their financials told a different story: unsustainable customer acquisition costs, inconsistent marketing, and no clear path to profitability. A classic case of a technically brilliant founder lacking business expertise. "This one has potential," my assistant, Parker, said, sliding the report across my desk. "Small team, great tech, but they're burning through cash too quickly. Classic acquisition target." I opened the file and froze when I saw the founder's name, James Hayes. My brother's company was on our list, and he had no idea I was in a position to influence its fate. My first instinct was to recuse myself. A clear conflict of interest, I thought, priding myself on my professional ethics. But curiosity got the better of me. What had James built? How was his company really performing? For once, I could see beyond his carefully curated narrative. The report was eye-opening. Nextier's technology was genuinely innovative. James had always been brilliant, but the business was a mess. 2 rounds of funding had been burned through with minimal revenue. Their marketing was erratic, their business model unsustainable. The very aspects James had dismissed as trivial were where his company was failing. I arranged a meeting with our Chief Strategy Officer, Monica Reynolds, to disclose the conflict. "I need to be upfront," I said as we sat down. "Nextier's founder is my brother." Monica raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize your brother was in tech." I laughed to spite myself. "Oh, he's made sure everyone knows he's in tech. He just doesn't advertise that his sister works for a corporate sellout like Synergy Tech." After discussing the ethics, we agreed I'd recuse myself from direct negotiations, but could advise due to my industry knowledge and familiarity with James's work. The acquisition made sense for Synergy Tech, conflict or not. "Just keep everything by the book," Monica advised. "Document all communications, and we'll ensure there's no appearance of favoritism or sabotage." Over the next 3 months, I watched from the sidelines as our team conducted due diligence. Their findings confirmed my assessment: brilliant technology, poor execution. Surprisingly, I found myself advocating for the acquisition. Despite my complicated feelings about James, his technology was worth saving, and his team deserved a chance to succeed with proper support. What struck me most was James's complete unawareness of my role. At family gatherings during this period, he continued to talk down to me, assuming I couldn't possibly understand his world. I sat quietly, knowing more about his company's financial state than he realized. The acquisition was finalized a week before Easter. Nextier became a subsidiary of Synergy Tech, its technology integrated into our platform. James would stay on as a technical advisor for 1 year, reporting to a manager who, ironically, reported to me. The financial terms were generous, more than the company's performance warranted, but we were paying for the intellectual property and talent, not the revenue. As Easter approached, I grew anxious about the family gathering. Should I tell them about my involvement? Warn James? I called Grandma Eleanor for advice. "You've done nothing wrong, Brianna," she said firmly. "You've built a career to be proud of, and you've acted ethically throughout. If James has misrepresented his success or underestimated yours, that's for him to reconcile." I groaned. "It's going to be so awkward." She chuckled, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Sometimes a little awkwardness is necessary for growth. Come to dinner, be yourself, and let the truth find its way to the table. So, I decided to attend Easter dinner without revealing my role up front. I wouldn't lie if asked, but I wouldn't volunteer the information either. Let James spin his version first, I thought. After years in his shadow, I was curious to see how he'd present his successful exit. Easter Sunday arrived with a deceptive calm. The April sky was a vibrant blue, blossoms dotted the trees in my parents' yard, and the air carried the fresh scent of spring. I pulled up to my childhood home with Michael, my boyfriend of 2 years, beside me. He squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Remember, you've done nothing wrong," he said, echoing Grandma Eleanor's words. "I'm here for moral support." Michael, a high school history teacher, was refreshingly removed from the tech world, making him the perfect neutral-sounding board during the acquisition process. He'd witnessed enough family gatherings to understand the dynamic with James. "I know," I sighed. "I just hate confrontation." "Sometimes it finds you anyway," he replied sagely. Mom greeted us at the door with her usual enthusiasm, hugging us tightly. "Brianna, Michael, so good to see you." Everyone's already here, just waiting on Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob. By everyone, she meant James and his wife, Heather, Grandma Eleanor, and my father's brother, Uncle Dave, with his family. I steeled myself and stepped into the living room. James was holding court by the fireplace, gesturing animatedly while Heather smiled politely beside him. Dad and Uncle Dave nodded, clearly impressed by whatever he was saying. Heather spotted me first, waving with genuine warmth. Despite everything, I'd always liked Heather. A pediatric nurse, she was kind and grounded, balancing James's ego with her quiet strength. "Brianna," she exclaimed, hugging me. "It's been too long." James turned, his storytelling interrupted. "Oh, hey sis." "Michael." He nodded curtly at my boyfriend before pivoting back to his audience. Anyway, as I was saying, the exit strategy worked perfectly. You have to know when to cash in your chips in this industry. My stomach tightened. Exit strategy? James was already spinning the acquisition as his master plan, not a lifeline for a failing company. "Tech is so volatile right now," he continued, "but if you know what you're doing, you can position yourself for maximum leverage." Dad beamed proudly. James was just telling us about his company's acquisition. Sounds like he made quite a deal. Is that right? I said, keeping my voice neutral. Congratulations, James. He shrugged with affected modesty. Just how the game is played. Not everyone understands the long-term strategy involved. Michael interjected helpfully, Brianna works in tech too. James laughed. Yeah, marketing for some corporate giant. Not quite the same as founding and exiting a startup. Before I could respond, Mom called from the kitchen. Brianna, could you help me with the deviled eggs? Grateful for the escape, I slipped away to where Grandma Eleanor was arranging appetizers. She looked up, her eyes twinkling. Just in time, she said, handing me a serving spoon. Your mother needs help, and I need entertainment. How's our tech mogul spinning his tail out there? I glanced toward the door and whispered, "He's acting like he orchestrated the whole thing as some brilliant strategy." She chuckled softly. "Men like your brother often rewrite history to protect their egos. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I busied myself with the deviled eggs. "Nothing, I guess." "What can I do?" "Stand up and announce his company was failing and mine saved it." "You could," she said calmly, "or you could simply tell the truth if asked, not to humiliate him, but because truth matters, especially in families." I hesitated. "You don't think I should just let it go, keep the peace?" Grandma placed a warm hand over mine. "Peace built on falsehood isn't peace, Brianna. It's suppression. You've spent your life dimming your light so James could shine brighter. Maybe it's time to stop." Mom bustled in, assigning more tasks, and the next hour passed in a flurry of activity as guests arrived. Through it all, I could hear James's voice rising above the chatter, shaping his narrative of entrepreneurial brilliance. As I helped Grandma set the dining room table, she murmured, "Stand tall, but don't force it. The truth has a way of finding its moment." Finally, Mom announced dinner was ready. We gathered around the large oak table, passing dishes and filling plates. James positioned himself at the center, across from Dad, the perfect spot to command attention. Michael and I sat near one end with Grandma Eleanor beside me. As we settled in, I felt tension building in my shoulders. James had spent the past hour misleading our family about his professional situation while dismissing mine. Yet here I sat, silently complicit. Grandma was right, this wasn't peace. As the conversation turned to careers and accomplishments, I knew the moment of truth was approaching. Easter dinner in the Hayes family was always a grand affair. Mom's table groaned under the weight of honey-glazed ham, creamy scalloped potatoes, vibrant green bean casserole, and her famous yeast rolls, which took hours to perfect. Crystal glasses, reserved for special occasions, sparkled under the dining room chandelier, and the good china, my grandparents' wedding gift, gleamed in perfect place settings. Aunt Linda raised her glass. "Before we start, I think we should toast to family, to spring, and to new beginnings." "And to success," James added quickly, raising his glass higher. "To new ventures and knowing when to cash out." Everyone lifted their glasses, though I noticed Heather's smile seemed strained. Grandma Eleanor's eyes met mine briefly before we sipped and began passing dishes. The conversation flowed easily at first, touching on safe topics: Cousin Amy's new baby, Uncle Rob's recent retirement, Aunt Linda's planned trip to Italy. But James grew restless as the discussion veered away from his achievements. During a lull, he seized his moment. "So, Dad, I've been thinking about advising you on your retirement portfolio," he said, cutting into his ham. "After this acquisition, I've got insights into where tech is headed that could maximize your returns." Dad looked impressed. "That would be great, son. I could certainly use the help." "What about you, Brianna?" Aunt Linda asked kindly. "How's work going for you?" "Still at the same company." Before I could answer, James jumped in. "Bree's still doing marketing at that big corporate place." "What is it again?" "Synergysoft." "Synergy Tech," I corrected quietly. Right, James continued dismissively. "Anyway, as I was telling Dad, the real action is in startups. Corporate tech is where innovation goes to die." I took a slow, deep breath. "Actually, that's not." "The problem with corporate environments," James interrupted, warming to his topic, "is that they're full of people who couldn't cut it as entrepreneurs." "No offense, Bree," he added with a patronizing smile that clearly meant offense. Mom tried to redirect. "Brianna has been promoted several times, James. She's doing very well." Sure, James nodded condescendingly. "I'm sure she's great at whatever marketing stuff she does. But let's be real, it's not the same as building something from nothing, taking real risks." The table grew uncomfortably quiet. Even Michael, normally diplomatic, was gripping his fork tightly. I focused on cutting my ham into precise pieces, willing myself to stay calm. James, oblivious to the tension, or perhaps thriving on it, continued. "The tech industry separates the visionaries from the support staff quickly. Some people have what it takes to innovate, to disrupt, to lead technological revolutions. Others are better suited to, well, supporting roles." He looked directly at me. Not everyone can handle a real career in tech. The silence was deafening. Mom looked mortified, Dad uncomfortable. Heather stared at her plate. Michael's hand found mine under the table, squeezing supportively. Then, from the other end of the table, Grandma Eleanor's clear, steady voice cut through. "Is that why your company just bought his?" Time seemed to stop. All eyes swiveled from Grandma to me, then to James, whose fork clattered against his plate. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. "What?" he sputtered, looking between us. "What are you talking about?" Grandma took a calm sip of water. "I'm simply asking if that's why Brianna's company, Synergy Tech, acquired your startup, Nexteer, because they're the real tech innovators." The table erupted in confused murmurs. Dad looked bewildered. "Brianna's company bought James's? What does that mean?" James's face flushed deep red. "That's not what happened," he stammered. "We were acquired, yes, but it was a strategic exit. I chose to sell, and Brianna had nothing to do with it. She works in marketing, for God's sake." All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I considered letting it go, preserving James's dignity. But Grandma's words about truth and families echoed in my mind. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I'm the director of strategic acquisitions at Synergy Tech. I've been in that role for almost 2 years now." James stared, disbelief etched on his face. "That's impossible. You would have said something." "Would I?" I asked quietly. "When, James? Between your lectures on blockchain or your explanations of why marketing isn't real tech work?" Dad interjected, confused. "You're saying you were involved in buying James's company?" "She's lying," James snapped. "She's trying to take credit for my exit. If she worked in acquisitions, I would have known. My team dealt with Synergy Tech executives." "Your team dealt with my team," I corrected. "I recused myself from direct negotiations because of our relationship, but yes, I was involved in an advisory capacity. I'm the one who initially identified Nexteer as an acquisition target." The stunned silence was broken by Heather's soft voice. "It's true, James. I saw Brianna's name on some of the preliminary paperwork. I assumed you knew and just weren't mentioning it." James looked betrayed. "You knew and didn't tell me?" "I thought you knew," Heather protested. "Why wouldn't you know?" "Because she's lying." James pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly. "This is sabotage. You deliberately targeted my company, didn't you? Couldn't stand that I was succeeding, so you had to take over and ruin it. Your company was 3 months from bankruptcy, James," I said, keeping my voice level. "You had great technology, but no sustainable business model. The acquisition saved your company, your employees' jobs, and your reputation. How dare you?" James was nearly shouting. "You know nothing about tech business." "James," Mom interjected, "please calm down." "I will not calm down," he snapped. "My sister has been undermining me my entire life, and now she's claiming she saved my company? That's rich." I looked around at the shocked faces of my family. "I'm not claiming I saved anything," I said. "I'm just telling the truth about what I do and what happened. Nexteer had valuable IP and talented engineers. That's why we acquired it. It was a business decision, not a personal one." James laughed bitterly. "Right, just business. Is that why you never mentioned your role?" "Because it was so impersonal." "I never mentioned my role because you never asked," I said simply. "You've never been interested in my career, James. You've been too busy explaining why what you do is so much more important." The raw honesty hung in the air. James opened his mouth, then closed it, turning and storming out. The front door slammed. Silence lingered for several seconds. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. "Well, that was unexpected." Aunt Linda turned to me. "Brianna, honey, I had no idea you were so high up in your company. Why haven't you ever told us?" I looked at their surprised, interested faces, feeling a weight lift. "I guess no one ever really asked," I said softly. As the shock settled, all eyes remained on me. The family dynamic had shifted abruptly, and no one seemed sure how to proceed. Heather looked uncomfortable, caught between loyalty to James and the truth revealed. Perhaps, Grandma Eleanor suggested gently, this would be a good time for Brianna to tell us about her actual career. Mom nodded eagerly, though her eyes darted to the door. "Yes, please." I feel terrible we don't know more about what you do, sweetheart. I took a deep breath, feeling vulnerable. For years, I'd kept my professional life separate, partly because of James's dismissiveness, partly because I'd grown used to being overlooked. I started at Synergy Tech in marketing. That's true, I began, but I moved into product strategy after 2 years, then to business development, and finally to acquisitions. I've been with the company for 9 years now. Dad looked surprised. 9 years? That's impressive in tech, isn't it? Such a volatile industry. Michael nodded. Extremely impressive. Brianna manages a team of 15 and reports directly to the C-suite. A small smile tugged at my lips as I glanced at my supportive boyfriend. It's a good position. I enjoy the work. But what exactly do you do? Aunt Linda asked, genuinely curious. So I explained how my team identified promising companies, evaluated their fit with Synergy Tech, and structured deals to benefit both parties. I described the due diligence process, negotiation strategies, and integration challenges. That sounds incredibly complex, Uncle Rob commented. I had no idea. And next here? Dad asked cautiously. How did that come about? I explained factually, emphasizing the professional aspects. The technology was genuinely innovative, I said, wanting to be fair to James. Our technical team was impressed. But the business fundamentals weren't strong enough to sustain the company independently. So you saved them, Aunt Linda concluded. We made a business decision that benefited both companies. I corrected gently. Synergy Tech got valuable IP and talent. Nextier's investors got a better return, and their employees got job security. And James? Mom asked quietly. James received fair compensation and has a 1-year contract as a technical advisor, I explained. After that, he can stay on if it's working out. Heather spoke up suddenly. The acquisition saved us financially, she admitted. James wouldn't want me to say this, but we were in trouble. He put everything into the company, our savings, a second mortgage. We were 3 missed payrolls from losing everything. Her honesty surprised me. James had always projected startup glamour, not financial vulnerability. I didn't know it was that serious, I said softly. Heather nodded. James is proud. He wouldn't admit how bad things had gotten. When Synergy Tech's offer came through, it was a miracle. But to him, it felt like failure. Dad looked troubled. Why wouldn't he tell us? We could have helped. For the same reason he couldn't admit Brianna might be successful in tech, Grandma Eleanor said wisely. Pride. The conversation paused as we absorbed this. I felt a mix of vindication, sadness for James's struggles, and frustration that it took this confrontation for the truth to emerge. I should probably go talk to him, Heather said, moving to stand. No, I said, deciding suddenly. I'll go. Michael squeezed my hand. Are you sure? I nodded. We need to clear the air once and for all. Mom looked worried. Brianna, maybe give him some time to cool down. We've given this situation years to cool down, Mom, I replied. It's time for an honest conversation. I found James on the front porch steps, staring at the quiet street. He didn't look up as I sat beside him, keeping a careful distance. Come to gloat, he asked flatly. No, I said. I came to talk, actually talk, for once. He gave a humorless laugh. What's there to talk about? You won. Congratulations. This isn't about winning or losing, James, I said. It's about truth. The truth is, I've spent my career being dismissed by you, watching you convince our family that what I do doesn't matter because it's not real tech work. So, this was revenge? Getting your company to swallow mine. I sighed in frustration. Do you really believe I'd risk my professional reputation and violate corporate ethics just to get back at you? He was quiet for a moment. When did you become director of acquisitions? He asked finally. 2 years ago. And you never thought to mention it at family gatherings? When, James? I asked. Between your monologues about neural networks and blockchain, you've never once asked about my career. Not once. He looked slightly abashed. I just assumed. You assumed I was still in the same entry-level marketing job I started 9 years ago. I finished for him because that fit your narrative that I wasn't capable of real tech. Meanwhile, I've been advancing, managing teams, succeeding in the industry you said I wasn't cut out for. James was silent, staring at his hands. When he spoke, his voice had lost its edge. Nextier was really failing, wasn't it? The vulnerability caught me off guard. The technology was sound, I said carefully, but yes, the business was in trouble. I kept thinking the next round of funding would solve everything, he admitted. That we just needed more runway. But each milestone we set, we'd miss or barely hit. That's actually pretty common in startups, I offered. It's why most fail. I didn't want to fail, he said, raw pain in his expression. I've built my identity around being the tech genius in the family. What am I if that's not true? The question hung heavy, weighted with years of competition. You're a tech genius, James, I said carefully. Your coding skills are incredible, and Nextier's technology is innovative. That's not in question. But building a successful company requires more than technical brilliance. It needs business acumen, market understanding, strategic planning, all the things you dismissed as unimportant compared to coding. He winced. Things you're good at. Yes, I acknowledged things I'm good at. We could have complemented each other's strengths all these years instead of you treating me like I was less than you because I focused on the business side of tech. James ran a hand through his hair, a childhood gesture that softened the moment. I've been an ass, haven't I? The blunt admission startled a laugh from me. Yes, you really have. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Can I blame it on the stereotypical arrogance of programmers? You can try, I teased, but I work with plenty of programmers who manage not to be condescending to their sisters. His smile faded, and he looked remorseful. I'm sorry, Brie. I really am. I didn't realize how dismissive I've been until I heard it played back today. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from him in years, maybe ever. Thank you for saying that. So, what happens now, he asked. With Nextier, I mean. With me. That depends partly on you, I said honestly. The integration team thinks your technology has potential as part of our enterprise suite. You know the code better than anyone. If you can put aside your pride and work collaboratively, there's a place for you. Working for my little sister's company, he said, but without the bitterness I expected. Working with a company that values your expertise, I corrected. My division oversees acquisitions, but I wouldn't be your direct manager. That would be Marcus, and technical integration. He's brilliant. You'd learn a lot from him. James was quiet. I need to think about it. That's fair, I agreed. But don't think too long. Tech moves quickly, as you know. We sat in silence, watching a neighbor walk their dog. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile. Progress of a sort. We should probably go back inside, I suggested. Mom's probably worried, and your food's getting cold. He nodded. This is going to be awkward, isn't it? Probably, I admitted, but maybe it's time we were honest with each other and the family. No more pretending. No more pretending, he agreed, offering his hand. I took it, letting him help me up, and together we walked back toward the house, toward a dinner that would be uncomfortable, but perhaps the most honest we'd had in years. Walking back into the dining room with James felt like entering a different world. Conversation stopped abruptly, eyes turning toward us with concern and curiosity. Heather looked relieved to see James return, some tension leaving her shoulders. Everything okay? Mom asked cautiously. James and I exchanged a glance. We're working on it, I answered honestly. We returned to our seats, and an awkward silence descended. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. Should we, continue with dinner? Yes, please, I said gratefully. Pass the potatoes. The meal resumed with forced normalcy, conversation steered toward neutral topics. But there was an unspoken acknowledgement that something had shifted. James was uncharacteristically quiet, contributing only when addressed, processing everything. As dessert, Mom's lemon meringue pie was served. James spoke up. I owe everyone an apology, he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence, especially you, Brianna. All eyes turned to him in surprise. James Hayes didn't apologize, it wasn't in his repertoire. I haven't been honest about my company's situation, he continued. The truth is, Nextier was struggling badly. The acquisition by Synergy Tech wasn't my brilliant exit strategy. It was a lifeline I was lucky to get. Heather squeezed his hand supportively. And I've been less than supportive of Brianna's career, he admitted. Actually, that's an understatement. I've been dismissive and condescending, and I was completely wrong. She's achieved more in tech than I realized, and I should have been celebrating her success instead of diminishing it. The raw honesty left me speechless. This was a side of James the first hadn't seen since we were kids, before competition built a wall between us. Dad looked between us, struggling to reconcile this new reality. James, we had no idea things were so difficult with your company. Why didn't you tell us? James shrugged, vulnerable. Pride, I guess. I've always been the tech prodigy, the successful one. Admitting failure didn't fit that image. But, sweetheart, Mom said gently, success isn't just about never failing. It's about how you handle challenges. Besides, Grandma Eleanor added, it seems the real tech success story in this family has been quietly unfolding while we were distracted by louder narratives. She smiled at me, and I felt a rush of gratitude for her support. Dad turned to me with regret in his eyes. We owe Brianna an apology, too. We should have asked more questions about your career, celebrated your achievements the way we celebrated James's. I'm sorry we didn't do that. We're very proud of you, sweetheart. Mom's eyes glistened. I just wish we'd known more about what you were accomplishing. The validation I'd sought for years washed over me, both gratifying and slightly overwhelming. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. So, what happens now? Aunt Linda asked. With the company, I mean. James looked to me, acknowledging my expertise, a reversal of our usual dynamic. Nextier's technology will be integrated into Synergy Tech's main platform, I explained. The technical team, including James, has the option to join Synergy Tech. James has a 1-year contract as a technical advisor. And will you stay on? Uncle Rob asked James directly. James glanced at me, then at Heather. I'm considering it. It would mean accepting a different role than I'm used to, but he paused, choosing his words. Maybe it's time I learn some new skills, the business side, specifically. It was the closest he'd come to acknowledging my expertise. I met him halfway. The tech industry works best when different types of expertise collaborate, I offered. Technical brilliance and business acumen aren't mutually exclusive, they're complementary. Like brother and sister, Grandma Eleanor suggested with a knowing smile. James laughed. Exactly like that, I suppose. As the meal continued, conversation flowed more naturally. For the first time in our adult lives, James and I engaged in genuine dialogue, not parallel monologues or one-sided lectures. He asked about my role at Synergy Tech with authentic interest, and I inquired about the technical challenges he'd solved at Nextier. Our family watched with something like wonder, as if witnessing a rare phenomenon. After dessert, as we cleared the table, Dad pulled me aside. I had no idea, Brianna, he said quietly, about your job, about how successful you've become. Why didn't you tell us more? I considered the question. I think after a while, I got used to being in the background. James was so forceful about his accomplishments that it seemed easier to stay quiet about mine. Dad looked distressed. We should have noticed. I should have noticed. It's okay, Dad, I reassured him. We all fell into patterns, but maybe now we can create new ones. Later, in the living room for coffee, Grandma Eleanor orchestrated a moment that felt impossible hours earlier. I think, she announced with matriarchal authority, we should have a proper toast to both siblings and their achievements in technology. She raised her coffee cup, eyes twinkling. To James, whose technical brilliance created valuable innovation, and to Brianna, whose business acumen ensures that innovation reaches its potential in the market. May they both continue to succeed, perhaps even together. To James and Brianna, the family echoed, raising their cups. James caught my eye across the room, raising his cup a little higher, a simple acknowledgement that spoke volumes. As guests departed, James approached me again. I meant what I said earlier, he said quietly. I'm sorry for how I've treated you and your career. I know, I said, and I appreciate that. He hesitated, then added, I'm going to take the position at Synergy Tech. I've got a lot to learn about the business side of tech. He smiled ruefully. It seems I have access to a pretty good teacher. I smiled back. Just promise not to call it not real tech work, and we'll be fine. Deal, he agreed, extending his hand. I bypassed it for a quick hug. Happy Easter, James. Happy Easter, Bree, he replied, the nickname carrying affection for the first time in years. Driving home with Michael, I felt exhausted yet invigorated. Years of family dynamics had shifted in one afternoon, old patterns disrupted, new possibilities revealed. How are you feeling? Michael asked as we navigated the evening traffic. Like something knotted for a long time is finally starting to untangle, I said. It's uncomfortable, but also freeing. He smiled. Your grandmother is something else, you know that? I laughed. Oh, I know. She's been waiting for this showdown for years. Think things will actually change with James? I think they already have, I said thoughtfully. Whether those changes stick, well, that's up to both of us. 3 months later, I sat across from James in the Synergy Tech cafeteria, our new Tuesday lunch ritual to discuss Nextier's integration and catch up as siblings. James was animated, explaining a new approach to the algorithm that had been Nextier's core innovation. The processing speed has increased by 37%, he said, eyes bright with excitement. Marcus thinks we can push it further if we restructure the data pipeline. I smiled, genuinely impressed. That's fantastic, James. The enterprise clients will love that performance boost. It's actually building on something your data science team suggested. He admitted a statement unthinkable months ago. Turns out, there are some smart people here at the corporate sellout. We both laughed, referencing his former dismissal of Synergy Tech. In the 3 months since James joined, I'd watched him adapt to corporate culture. There were rough patches, his bluntness ruffled HR feathers, and he initially bristled at approval layers, but he was learning. Surprisingly, he seemed to enjoy the stability and resources of a larger company. How are things with Marcus? I asked. James considered. Good, actually. He knows his stuff and doesn't micromanage. I'm learning a lot about project management and team leadership, still a work in progress, he admitted ruefully. This self-awareness was a striking change. The James of 6 months ago would never have acknowledged a skill deficit. Our conversation drifted to family. Mom and Dad had visited the Synergy Tech campus, seeing firsthand what both their children did. It was a revelation, especially for Dad, who alternated between proud exclamations and confused questions about technology. I think they're still processing it all, James said. 20 years of thinking I was the only tech person in the family, and now they're trying to understand that you've been quietly outranking me for years. Not outranking, I corrected gently. Different paths, different skills. He nodded. Fair enough. Speaking of family, are you free for dinner at Grandma Eleanor's this weekend? She specifically requested both of us. I smiled. Since Easter, Grandma had been deliberate in fostering our rebuilt relationship. Wouldn't miss it. That woman's cooking is worth any family therapy session she might have planned. She's subtle as a sledgehammer, James agreed affectionately, but effective. As we walked back to our departments, I reflected on how much had changed. Our relationship remained a work in progress. Decades of patterns couldn't be undone in months, but each interaction felt more authentic. James occasionally slipped into his old condescending tone, but caught himself with a sheepish smile. I was learning to assert my expertise rather than seething silently when overlooked. Our parents were adapting, too. Mom asked specific questions about my work, genuinely trying to understand. Dad forwarded articles about women in tech leadership, his way of recognizing my place in that world. The most profound change was internal. After years of diminishing my accomplishments to keep peace, I was learning to take up space, acknowledge my expertise, and correct misperceptions without apology. In professional settings, this confidence translated to stronger leadership and clearer communication with my team. The following weekend, James and I joined Grandma Eleanor for dinner at her cozy apartment. After her famous pot roast, she served coffee in the living room and fixed us with her direct gaze. So, she said, settling into her armchair, how are my 2 tech executives getting along these days? We exchanged amused glances. Subtlety isn't your strong suit, is it, Grandma? I teased. At my age, dear, there's no time for beating around the bush, she replied. We're doing well, James answered. Better than I expected, honestly. He's learning to accept feedback without taking it as a personal attack, I added with a smirk. And she's learning to give feedback without sounding like a corporate training manual, James countered good-naturedly. Grandma smiled, satisfaction evident. Good. Family should be honest with each other, but kindly so. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, I said. About honesty in families. For years, we all participated in this fiction that James was the only tech success story. Me by staying quiet, James by exaggerating his, and the family by never questioning it. It was comfortable. For me, anyway, James admitted. I got to be the star. And what have you learned from having that comfort disrupted? Grandma asked him. James considered seriously. That comfort isn't always growth. That being the star kept me from learning things I needed to know. And that I missed out on an ally by treating my sister like a competitor. Grandma nodded, turning to me. And you, Brianna? That silence isn't peace, I said. That diminishing myself to make others comfortable wasn't serving anyone, least of all me. And that authenticity, while uncomfortable, is the only way to be truly known and loved. Very good, Grandma said, sounding like the professor she once was. Now, the real test will be taking these lessons forward. Family patterns have a way of reasserting themselves if we're not vigilant. We're working on it, I assured her. James has been asking for my input on managing his team, and I've been consulting him on technical aspects of upcoming acquisitions. Turns out, our skills really do complement each other, James added. As I've been saying for approximately 30 years, Grandma noted dryly. We laughed, the sound of genuine affection filling the room. As we prepared to leave, Grandma held our hands. I'm proud of you both, she said simply, not just for your professional accomplishments, impressive as they are, but for doing the hard work of breaking unhealthy patterns. That takes more courage than any career achievement. Driving home, I reflected on her words. It had taken courage to disrupt our family's comfortable fiction, but the freedom of authenticity was worth the discomfort. James and I would never have a perfect relationship. Siblings rarely do. We were too different, too shaped by our experiences. But we'd found a way to respect those differences, seeing them as complementary rather than competitive. In the tech industry, where change is constant, adaptability is essential. James and I had applied that principle to our relationship, and both were stronger for it. The truth hadn't destroyed our family, as I'd feared. It had rebuilt it on a solid foundation, where achievements were celebrated, not compared, where differences were assets, not threats, and where being known was more important than being impressive. It was a lesson I carried into all aspects of my life. Authentic connections, built on honesty rather than performance, were the most valuable technology of all. Have you ever had a moment where standing in your truth changed a relationship for the better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this journey of sibling rivalry turned collaboration, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need permission to shine their own light without dimming it for others. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most important disruption isn't in technology, but in the patterns we've accepted for too long. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.